works for those in power, and turkeys won't vote for Christmas. President number 1. After winning their independence from Britain, the newly formed United States of America decided to create a position of president as opposed to possibly a new monarch. It was here the Electoral College was created, because the Founding Fathers didn't trust the masses of the 13 colonies to be informed about the presidential candidates. Instead, people would vote for electors who did keep up to date with politics. Military hero and founding father George Washington was unanimously elected the first president of the United States in 1789, and he served 2 4-year terms, establishing a strong and stable nation. In the beginning, Congress was held in Federal Hall in New York City, but it was ultimately decided to locate the nation's capital between Maryland and Virginia along the Potomac River, and would be called Washington, D.C. Philadelphia became the temporary capital while the new capital was being constructed. Tensions within George Washington's cabinet between his Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson, and Secretary of Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, led to a split into a 2-party system, becoming the Democratic Republicans and the Federalists. Washington wasn't much of a politician, more of a military. As France followed America into their own revolution, Washington chose not to support them. He had the option of running for a 3rd term, but he chose to step aside and let the country run without him. There were many myths later told about Washington chopping down a cherry tree and not being able to tell a lie. He also owned 317 enslaved people while in office, and they were freed not upon his death, but later after the death of his wife. President number 2. Washington's vice president and fellow founding father, John Adams, was elected the 2nd president. The founding fathers were men of the Enlightenment, a period of new thinking, forward thinking through questions and knowledge. Revolutionary France was a period, and Adams sided with the British, while his political opponents in the Democratic Republican Party supported the French. Adams strengthened the Navy and ordered them to harass French ships in response to French harassment of American ships. He managed to avoid complete war with France, but he also clamped down on freedom of speech against the government and against foreigners. This was not popular and cost him a 2nd term. He was the first president to live in what would later become known as the White House, while Washington, D.C. itself was still being constructed. President number 3. Adams was defeated by Thomas Jefferson, another founding father and chief author of the Declaration of Independence 25 years earlier. He had founded the Democratic Republican Party. Up until now, whoever came second in the presidential election became vice president. Jefferson changed this, as having a political opponent as vice president was frustrating. So in his 2nd term, Jefferson appointed his own. As a man of the Enlightenment, Jefferson was quite secular, deeming himself a deist, believing that if there is a God, he only got the ball rolling on existence and hasn't really interfered since. He believed in a strong wall of separation between church and state, protecting religious minorities and stopping governments from being corrupted by religious fundamentalism. As president, he strengthened trade, defending against pirates, and famously organized the Louisiana Purchase, in which he personally bought French Louisiana from Napoleonic France for the US, at a dirt cheap price, nearly doubling the size of the nation. While Europe was at war against Napoleon, Jefferson wanted USA's neutrality respected, so he banned all exports, seriously damaging the economy. He thought Native Americans would either have to assimilate or be moved west, and he did this. And he banned the import of enslaved people from Africa, although the internal slave trade continued strongly. When enslaved people rose up against French rulers in Haiti, Jefferson embargoed the country and drove it into poverty. He wrote about the United States' terrible reliance on slavery, and owned around 600 enslaved people while in office, fathering several children with the enslaved Sally Hemings. President number 4. James Madison was next. He had helped write the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. His presidency saw the War of 1812 with Britain over trade disputes and the British Shanghaiing of American sailors. Madison pushed for this war, despite USA being deeply underprepared for it.
Bye-bye.
Madison's war saw